in based MMA history, it is time to clear the air when it comes to the lightweight division. There's a lot of things going around. Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev reportedly targeted for International Fight Week. Then it comes out that Islam Makhachev has turned down the fight against Ilia Topuria. And then there's rumors that Topuria has turned down a fight against Armin Tsarukyan. So right now there's a bit of a mess. And it's time for me to clear the air when it comes to the lightweight division. And in this video, I'm going to be going through the lightweight rankings. And I'm also going to make arguments, guys, because I know that I made a video saying how I would fix the lightweight division, but I don't think I did a good enough job of really proving my point, of really explaining why I believe I'm right when it comes to the lightweight division, and why people that don't want to see Ilia Topuria fight for Islam Makhachev next are in the wrong. They're very much in the wrong, and these are the same people that are pushing for Justin Gaethje to get a title shot. These are the same people that are pushing for Armin Tsarukyan to fight Islam Makhachev, and I'm going to tell you why that's not going to happen in this video, and we're going to do that by going through the lightweight rankings. Ruckus right now in the lightweight division is a guy named Ilia Topuria, who just vacated his belt in the featherweight division, coming off two of the greatest wins in featherweight history against Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway, and is moving up to the lightweight division. Ever since Topuria announced that he's moving up to the lightweight division, the division has been in a bit of a mess. Everybody's afraid in the lightweight division, and I know a lot of people are going to be mad. They're going to be like, are you saying that the lightweights are afraid of Topuria? That's exactly what I'm saying. And I'm going to prove in this video that the lightweights are absolutely scared of Ilia Topuria, which is crazy, right? Because they just see him as another featherweight. Why would you be scared of that guy? Because they know that Topuria is a dangerous matchup for them. They really do know that. And I do not believe Topuria is afraid of any of these guys. If he was afraid, why would he vacate his belt and move up to the lightweight division? Why would he do that? Exactly, he's not afraid, and I'm going to explain why in this video. Now, there's two arguments, there's two camps, right? There's people that want the Islam Topuria fight, and those are the true MMA fans. Like, Lucas Tracy's pushing for that fight. Most MMA fans really want to see Islam versus Topuria, and a lot of people are like, no, well, Topuria needs to fight a contender in the lightweight division. And my argument to that is, okay, where was that same energy when John Jones was challenging for the heavyweight title? Why didn't he fight a heavyweight contender first? Understand about the UFC, they don't truly understand the sport, that they think that there's some rule set that the UFC needs to follow when it comes to contenders and title shot, and we do not live in a perfect world. That doesn't happen. That is why guys like Marlon Vera get title shots. Why do you think Kaya Sakura got a title shot on his UFC debut? John Jones was able to move up to the heavyweight division. He didn't have to fight a contender in the heavyweight division to show that he's a true heavyweight before challenging somebody. He didn't have to do that, right? Because of circumstances. And I think that Topuria is in a position right now to fight Islam Makhachev for the title, but these hardcore, aka hardcore wannabe MMA fans say, no, Topuria needs to fight a lightweight contender, even though the guy just knocked out Max Holloway, who put Justin Gaethje into the shadow realm. Like, how is that not relevant whatsoever? Of course, that's absolutely relevant when it comes to Topuria moving up to the lightweight division, that he was able to do that to a Max Holloway who had momentum, who just knocked out Justin Gaethje in brutal fashion at UFC 300. Like, why would people not want to see Makhachev versus Topuria? Like, why do we need to see Topuria fight Tsarukyan? Why do we need to see him fight Gaethje or an Oliveira? We don't really need to see that. We really don't. And I'm going to prove by going through the rankings why Topuria is the only guy that should fight Makhachev, and why the matchups that I have for the lightweight division are the correct matchups for this weight class. And for Islam, look, Islam wants to be active, guys. He's coming off a very easy win over Renato Moicano at UFC 311, where he took absolutely no damage. So these people that want to see Islam Makhachev, wait until October to fight for the title is absolutely ridiculous. Like, why would you even want that as an Islam Makhachev? And why would you want to see Islam wait almost another year to fight? Like, why would you want that? No, the guy's active. The guy's in great shape. He did not take any damage against Renato Moicano. Why wouldn't you want to see him return in the summer? The guy wants to return in the summer. So this argument that, Armin and Topuria should fight and then Islam should fight them in October because there's no clear number one contender is absolutely ridiculous. Like, why do you want Islam in his prime to sit on the sidelines and not fight anybody in the lightweight division, coming off a Moicano win where he submitted him in the first round? Make that make sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense. Now let's move on to Charles Oliveira here. Charles Oliveira is coming off a win over Michael Chandler, who hadn't fought in 2 years, and he took him to a decision. Before that, he got beat by Armis Yukin by decision, and then before that, he TKO'd Benio Dariush, and then he was given the title shot, the rematch with Islam Makhachev, and what did he do? He pulled out of that fight. So Charles should not be fighting for the belt. Now let's go for Armis Yukin here. Armis Yukin, obviously he should have gotten the title shot, and he did get a title shot against Islam Makhachev at UFC 311. And then what happened? He pooped his pants the day before the fight because of a back injury, and the UFC is not happy with him. So Armis Yukin will not be getting the next title shot in the lightweight division. Now let's move on to Justin Gaethje here. The highlight, Gaethje is coming off a very good win over Rafa Fiziev, and where I picked him to beat Rafa Fiziev, a lot of people were underestimating Justin Gaethje. Now that Justin Gaethje beat Rafa Fiziev, who he had already beaten 2 years ago, and then now he beats him on short notice, people want him to get a title shot against Islam Makhachev, even though he just got knocked out a year ago by a featherweight? Make that make sense to me. So why should Justin Gaethje get the title shot? Then Dustin here, you know, I love Dustin. He's a great fighter, one of the funnest fighters to watch, but he shouldn't have gotten a title shot against Islam Makhachev. Now, the reason why I did not complain about Dustin Poirier getting a title shot, even though I technically did, is because due to circumstances, Armis Yukin was coming off that win at UFC 300. You know, to fight in June was going to be very short notice for him. Dustin Poirier was the only guy available to fight Islam Makhachev. I'd rather see Islam fight than not fight at all. So obviously I understand why they made that fight. It is what it is, but if we're being honest, Dustin Poirier should not have gotten the title shot. Mateus Gamrot, I mean, should I even start? Like, you see what I'm saying here? The only guy for Islam Makhachev is Topuria, especially if Islam Makhachev wants to be active. And the thing is that Topuria is not just another featherweight. Like, I think people are so afraid that people are going to discredit Islam Makhachev's wins in the lightweight division just because he beat Alexander Volkanovski twice and then he beats Topuria. Like, no, bro. Islam Makhachev's best wins are Charles Oliveira and Alexander Volkanovski. The only fight that has kind of an asterisk is a Volkanovski rematch, because obviously Volkanovski took that fight on 10 days notice, and even then I still count it as a pretty good title defense by Islam Makhachev because he knocked him out in the first round. So this argument that, no, well, Islam's just defending his title against another featherweight, like, bro, that's so retarded. That's so stupid. That is so stupid. Topuria is undefeated in MMA, has a bunch of aura, and if Islam is able to beat Topuria, that's one of his best wins on his resume. Like, why are we acting like people are discrediting Alexander Volkanovski? Of course, there's going to be those stupid fans that are discrediting Islam Makhachev's wins over Alexander Volkanovski, but the true fans know that that is one of Islam's best wins. That and the Charles Oliveira win is one of Islam's best wins in the division. So that's the fight that needs to happen next, and we're going to be going over some tweets in this video as well. Is clearly ducking Ilia Topuria. He's only going to fight him under one condition. I will only fight if he wins the belt. This is my weight class. I hold a higher ranking. I've been a champion before. As you can tell here, Charles Oliveira is clearly ducking Ilia Topuria, bro, because Charles Oliveira is in no position to fight for the title. One, you're coming off a Chandler win over a Chandler who hadn't fought in 2 years. And like I said, before that, you got beat by Armis Yukin. You had the Islam Makhachev rematch. You pulled out of that fight. So you're not in a position to be calling the shots. Like, yeah, you're higher in the rankings, but like I told you guys, some of these fighters don't even understand the UFC itself. Rankings mean absolutely nothing in the UFC. That is why you get random title shots. This is entertainment at the end of the day, and that's something that MMA fans don't truly understand about the sport. They think, like I said, that they think there's some hidden rule set where this guy needs to beat this guy to then fight for the title. That's not how UFC works. It's never worked like that. So I don't understand why, you know, people want Topuria to go through contenders to fight Islam Makhachev. It just doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense for the UFC. It doesn't make sense in terms of business. And like here, I'm showing you that Charles Oliveira doesn't want to fight Topuria because he believes that he will only fight him for the belt. Like, this is his weight class, whatever that means. I have not agreed to the fight with Ilia Topuria, and this really disappoints me because I really want to see that fight. And like I said, it doesn't make sense to me that Makhachev wants to be so strict about, you know, Topuria needs to fight a contender. But when it comes to Justin Gaethje, he's not, he likes fighting Justin Gaethje, a guy who's coming off a win over Rafa Fiziev, who's not even in the top 10, and before that got slept by a featherweight, he'd rather fight Justin Gaethje than Ilia Topuria, who's a featherweight champion who just knocked out Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Like, how does that make sense? Do you see why people are frustrated with Islam Makhachev and his team? And honestly, I don't even think it's Islam Makhachev himself. I really do believe it's his team who are concerned. I think they know that Topuria is a real threat, and because of that, they want to see him go through lightweight contenders, so they have a better idea of how good Ilia Topuria is in the lightweight division. I truly believe that's what's going on here, and honestly, I'm super convinced that lightweights are scared of Topuria. That's the only reason why, because why wouldn't you want to fight this guy with all this aura, with all this hype? You could be the guy that beats Topuria and takes away all his hype and aura, and then you cement yourself with a title shot. You know what I'm saying? So I don't understand why they're ducking Topuria. Look, Islam versus Topuria is the biggest fight they can make right now in the UFC besides John Jones and Tom Aspinall. That's why I believe that the UFC is really going to try to make that fight, and I just don't understand why fans do not want to see that fight. They'd rather see Topuria versus Hooker. They'd rather see Topuria versus Arman. They'd rather, like, look, Topuria versus Arman is a great fight. I would love that fight. The reason why I don't love that fight right now is because Islam is going to fight in the summer. Like, if Islam was injured and he could not come back to fight until October, then I think the fight to make would be Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan. The winner of that gets a title shot. I completely agree with that fight. But because Islam wants to come back in the summer, and because Arman's not going to get the next title shot, because I do not believe Justin Gaethje should get the next title shot, the only guy right now is Ilia Topuria. And like I said, I think Islam beating Topuria right now is a better win than beating Justin Gaethje, than even beating, I mean, Arman Tsarukyan would be a pretty good win on his resume, but I mean, he's already beaten him a long time ago, and the UFC already tried to make that fight, and then Arman pulled out of that fight, so that's why they're not going to make that fight next, even though in theory, theoretically, Arman Tsarukyan should be getting the next title shot. Matchups that truly make sense are Topuria Makhachev, Arman Tsarukyan versus Justin Gaethje, Oliveira versus Hooker, Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway 3. Those are the true matchups in the lightweight division, because then you make Topuria versus Makhachev, you know, the winner of that fight. I mean, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be a massive fight in the summer. You know, if Makhachev beats Topuria, that's one of the best wins on his resume. He just beat an undefeated fighter in his prime that has a bunch of aura, that has a bunch of hype. If Topuria beats Makhachev, I mean, that would be massive in its own right. And then you make Tsarukyan versus Gaethje, and the reason why you make that fight is because, one, obviously Tsarukyan, the UFC is not happy with Tsarukyan, and then with Gaethje, if Gaethje is able to get through Arman Tsarukyan, I think that really cements him as the next contender, as the next title shot contender in the lightweight division. And I think a lot more people would be excited for a Justin Gaethje title shot. And then for Arman, you're like undeniable if you beat someone like Justin Gaethje. You know what I'm saying? So that makes sense. And then Charles Oliveira versus Dan Hooker. I mean, I think that I understand that might not be a big fight for Charles Oliveira, but I mean, Charles Oliveira is coming off a Michael Chandler win. Before that, he lost to Arman Tsarukyan. So I think Charles Oliveira needs to get a couple more wins in the lightweight division. Plus the fact that, I mean, he hasn't fought Dan Hooker. I think that would be a very, very fun fight. I mean, I would love to see Charles Oliveira fight a Max Holloway. But the reason why I don't believe that's going to happen is because I think the UFC is going to give Dustin Poirier a big fight for his retirement. And I think that's going to end up being Max Holloway.